Afternoon. All right. So, novel solutions with JAMF IT. Yeah, my name is Bryson Terrell. I am Desktop Services Specialist with JAMF Software based out of the Minneapolis office. What we're going to be doing here today is I'm going to take 4 code-based solutions that we worked with over the past year and sort of go through 3 main questions about them. If you want to follow along, I'm going to have snippets in here and just little blurbs, but I'm not going to have the full scripts that I'm going to talk about on the screen. Everything I'm going to talk about is already out on GitHub. So if you want to, just head out to github.com/jamfit, and you can follow along to each one of these examples I'm going to go through here. So as I said, we're going to go through 4 of these that I picked out of what we've uploaded so far. We're going to talk about 3 key questions about each of them. What were we trying to solve? What was our approach to this particular challenge, and how did we implement the solution to it? The ones that I picked out, if you're already looking at the GitHub page, if you're able to get to the GitHub page, are encrypted parameters, syncing objects from LDAP to the JSS, self-serve enrollment profiles and inventory packages, and then ordering iPhones, which sounds a lot different from the other 3, doesn't it? So one little warning here, you might actually be in the wrong session. If you were in Slack or on Jamf Nation, you actually believed people when they were asking about what I was going to talk about. Nobody here wants to talk about Novell. It's not going to happen. Yeah, nope, leave. So when we say novel solutions, we're sort of talking about unique things that sort of pop up at Jamf, and we sort of have to work our way around them or figure out something to do with them. Nice example of that is like take self-service. Self-service is great for distributing software. Self-service doesn't help me when somebody walks up to me and says, hey, Bryson, can I have a mouse? Hey, Bryson, can I have a trackpad? Hey, Bryson, can I have a magic keyboard? They just came out today, I hear. Rather, novel solutions would be taking the idea of self-service and converting it into something like a real-life vending machine that they walk up to and badge at. That's real, by the way. That's going into the Minneapolis office. People were super excited to see it. But we're not going to talk about vending machines. We're talking about code for the most part. All right. Is Brian LaShawn in here? Yeah, I saw what you posted on there. I'll come find you if you heckle me. Word of warning there, Brian. All right. So I'm going to dive in the first one here, and this is encrypted parameters. So when I'm talking about encrypted parameters, I'm talking about you have a policy, you have a script for your policy, and you pass parameters to it. And one of the common workflows that we talk about with any scripts that maybe you use service accounts with is you don't put the service account hardcode into your script. You pass the service account as a set of parameters, so that way when the file comes down, someone can't grab a copy of the script and then get the credentials. So, well, okay, that's great. What exactly am I trying to solve? Well, here's the thing. You come work at Jamf Software. We give you your AD account. You can then go to the JSS, the production JSS that's used to manage devices at Jamf Software, and you can actually log into it, and you have broad read access to a ton of stuff in there. Computer records, mobile device records, a lot of the JSS settings. You also can go look at policies. So if they have read access to policies, then that means they can see the parameters that are on the scripts that are in those policies, and then it becomes a little bit of a challenge there with trying to keep things away from people. So I mean, like any other org, we have certain self-service policies or just automated policies that make use of a service account to either the JSS or something else to perform an action. So we need to somehow secure that without just yanking people's access away from the JSS because for a company that sells the Casper suite, it's sort of beneficial to be able to log into a real one and see what IT is doing with it. So what was our approach to trying to fix this? Well, the whole idea was, well, if we don't want to take away their ability to view policies, why not just encrypt the parameter? So you have an encrypted string that's being passed as the parameter for your script, and then the pieces to decrypt that are actually hard-coded into the script itself. So we did end up removing staff's read access to scripts, so they can't go into the JSS and they can't view the scripts anymore. Not that big of a deal because we share a lot of our code internally and externally as it is anyway, but they still have read access to policies. Now, actually, implementing this solution is not 100% secure, but as JVZ has said many times, it's more about putting hurdles in front of people in order to get to the end result. So this makes it more secure even if it's not perfectly ideal. All right, so actually implementing this. Again, I just invoked his name. Hopefully he doesn't show up, but full credit to JVZ for the original concept for this. Who all here knows JVZ, our information security guy? Yeah, he's a warm, fuzzy guy. He actually played around with this because this was originally his concept, and he figured out using the OpenSSL binary on a Mac, we can encrypt and decrypt string data. So I took his concept and I made 2 wrapper functions that I use for pretty much any script in the JSS that actually uses a service account to achieve something. That's generate encrypted string, which I just use in the terminal to get what I need, and then the decrypt string function goes into every single script where I need to leverage it. Just to show you what that looks like, this function I actually have in my bash profile, so I don't need to ever copy and paste anything from it. It's just in my bash profile. I fire up a terminal window, I type generate encrypted string, I put what I want in quotations, and then it pops out these 2 lines of output. The actual encrypted string, this is the piece that goes into the policy. You can see it's just a bunch of base64 data. The 2 values below it, the salt and the passphrase, those are randomly generated by the function. So if I was to rerun this again, it would come out with a different salt, different passphrase, and the encrypted string would be different. So even if I was to use the same service account across multiple scripts, if I do this uniquely for each script, it's the same username and password, but the data is scrambled differently each time. Inside the script itself, this is where we paste in the decrypt string function. It looks just like this. And then whenever I want to actually have a variable decode something that passes a parameter, it's just this syntax right here. Username equals decrypt string function. First you pass parameter 4 from the JSS. Then the salt and the passphrase are in the script, and it decodes it into plain text, and the script can use it normally. In the JSS web interface, it looks just like this. This is my asset tag policy, because I actually have an API action to go update the asset tag. And that's what it looks like right there. I have the username and password variables labeled here. So those are the encrypted strings, and then the script is decrypting them when it runs on the client. So this is actually something that I use a lot. It's used in about 10 or 12 scripts that we have in the JSS, I think. And it's actually really handy, and it's a great way to obfuscate those passwords and usernames. So moving on to my second hand-picked example here is our syncing objects from LDAP. On GitHub, I think it's just called JSS LDAP Sync. Now, what I'm talking about here is the JSS does sync a lot of data from LDAP, especially in terms of location data on device records, but it doesn't sync things like departments and buildings because those are actually objects in the JSS. It's not just data it can sync freely. So what happened was we had a little bit of a pain point not too long ago where there's a bunch of reorganizing going on in JAMF. A lot of people had departments changed, either because they switched departments or the department itself was changed into different departments or different groups, and all this was being changed in AD. Some offices or office regions were being renamed, so like instead of people having Netherlands associated for their office, they were now actually Amsterdam, Germany, and such. And we were having a hard time actually keeping up with this because HR was making all these changes and we were trying to manually reconcile all this. We ended up getting gaps in our inventory records, which was dropping and these were dropping devices into the wrong results in advanced searches or computer groups that were actually looking for those attributes. And it was just sort of a pain. And can anyone here just agree with me that manually reconciling data sucks? I mean, show of hands here. Who's actually gone through departments or buildings for your organization to compare them to your JSS and then clean that all up? Does it suck? It sucks. It sucked for me. I didn't want to do it again. So my approach to this was I'm going to script it. You know me, I like scripting things. So this is actually a Python script, and it reads in from LDAP all the staff records, and then it builds lists of departments and buildings, and it compares them to those in the JSS. And in our environment, this is actually really easy because we only have one staff OU, and then we only have 2 attributes to look at in order to build these lists. And the reason why I did Python instead of a shell script, you could maybe do this with a shell script, but in my opinion, Python is way better when it comes to sorting and comparing values from lists, or arrays as they're referred to in a bash script. So I went the Python approach for this. And this actually uses a third-party library called Python LDAP, which handles all this stuff. What's the bash binary for that? I don't remember. LDAP Search. LDAP Search is what you would use in a bash script. There's actually a Python library that uses the same back-end hooks, but it lets you do it in the script. All right, so the way that this works, the way that this script works, and you can go out and GitHub again and just look at all the code that's in there for this. The lists of the departments or buildings are actually assembled by going out to LDAP to the OU that I pointed to. It reads in every user record from that OU, and then it loops through all of them, and it grabs out all the unique values for department, which of course maps to departments in the JSS, and also physical delivery office name. That long-winded attribute is actually what we use to map to building in the JSS. So this script is looping through all those, and it's finding all the unique ones, and it spits them out. It'll then do the same thing where it'll do a get on the JSS to the departments object and then the buildings object, and it'll produce the same thing. At that point, it'll go through, compare all of them, and take appropriate action. Everything that's in LDAP, but not in the JSS, gets posted, it gets created. Everything that's in the JSS, but not in LDAP, gets deleted. And then everything that actually matched up is left untouched. And just to show you what that looks like, this is what it looks like if you just run it from the terminal. It can also be set up to run as just a routine job, maybe once a week, once a month or something. You just type out, I just type out the path to the script, prompts me for the LDAP server, the JSS URL, prompts my credentials, then it points out the OU that I put into the script for it to point to, parses all the records, and then it starts writing out in the terminal which ones it found when it comes across a unique one and adds it into the list. Then skip a bit. Once it finishes that, it'll tell you how many departments it found, how many buildings it found, and then it'll tell you what actions it's going to be taken, list those actions out, and then it's done. And if you run this once and it does all its actions and run it again, it of course won't do anything because everything will line up. But this saved me a lot of time and effort with trying to get a list from HR and go through the JSS and manually delete all the old groups that we used to have, and it saved me a lot of time. I mean, I tried doing that, it really sucked. Because we had what, 36 departments in the JSS at one point, and 12 of them got axed, but 10 got added in again. Not a fun time. All right. So this is one that some of you were probably scratching your head at when you saw the title for it. Self-serve enrollment profiles and inventory packages. Why am I trying to solve that at all? These things just exist. Well, this is another one of those things that's sort of a unique challenge at JAMF software, and maybe some of you can relate to it depending upon your own organizations. We distribute a ton of hardware to our staff. We're Mac and iOS only inside at JAMF software. We also write and support the Casper suite, and we use it internally as well. Most technical staff at JAMF have OS X and iOS hardware dedicated to them just for testing purposes. Some technical staff have access to pools of testing hardware for this, and even more, like Rob here, have an entire kit that travels around the world with them that contains 12 Macs and 12 iPads. And they're sort of responsible for submitting inventory on all this stuff. So earlier I mentioned you work at JAMF software, you have broad read access to the JSS. Well, you don't get write access to the JSS for very good reason. Staff can't go into computer and mobile device records, go to location, and just edit it because oh, well, I actually don't have this device anymore. I hand it over to somebody else. I'm just going to delete my name off of there. That kind of causes problems when all of a sudden we're not tracking the device because it got handed off and somebody said, well, I don't have it anymore. They just cleared their name off. we want them to have to enroll a device at one way or another because they have to authenticate somehow in order to get to that step, and the authentication provides proof of who actually is in possession of that device. So imagine in Rob's case, and he's had to do this before, bless him, he has 12 MacBook Airs and 12 iPads, and he has to submit inventory in all of them, and he has to go to the enrollment URL and type in his username and password 24 times and go through the process. He's not going to be happy with that, having to do that frequently. So our challenge was to try to provide some tools to staff to streamline that, make it easier while making sure that they are still tying devices to them in the JSS so that we can track where it is. Well, there were two pieces to this. The first thing is that we decided, well, we'll just use self-service for deploying these tools to them. And that actually that helps out a lot because self-service, they have to log in to do it. That's the authentication piece. So now we know who's logged into it. And at the same time, they've logged in. We can grab their username and use it to customize the files that we're going to deliver to them. So yeah, self-service provides the authentication piece. And then the enrollment profiles, there's two pieces of this. It's actually using the JSS REST API to generate or read the enrollment profile objects on the back end. With the inventory packages, we're actually using a special computer invitation code to handle that, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail here. So I'm going to split this up here because we're dealing with two different solutions here for the same thing. Enrollment profiles is obviously for all the iOS devices we have floating around here. This one is, again, another Python script, but it also works with the JSS REST API. Python has a library called elementary, xml.etree.elementary. It's fantastic for parsing XML data, which is what we interact with the API for. So it's going to leverage that. Python also has a data type called a dictionary, which when you use it with another library called plslib allows you to take the contents of a dictionary and all of its all the values within it and outputs it into a plist format when you're ready to write that. So these all naturally make this solution work much better as a Python script. All right, so enrollment profiles are read or created and then read through the REST API. The goal here is that we want to be able to enable users to generate their own enrollment profiles in the JSS without actually giving them access to the web interface to do so. So there's a service account that's actually handling all this for us, and it's using their username when it's doing it. So they only ever have one invitation, enrollment profile invitation, tied to their username at any time. Of course, the data that's read back is going to be used for constructing the profile that's delivered to them locally on their computer. All right, so this is a much longer script, and these are just a few key sections out of it. So again, get on GitHub if you want to check out the whole thing here. This block of code talks about that piece I was just mentioning, where it checks to see if they already have an enrollment profile, and if not, creates it. You'll see that at the top there, I've got this line that says JSS equals JSS, and then in parentheses, the URL and the authentication. This is a miniature Python class that's in that script. Another great thing that's about Python is that you can organize your code much better. So that way, when you're looking at this block here, I'm just saying JSS enrollment profile equals JSS.getEnrollmentProfile, and the name that I'm expecting because I predefined what the naming convention for all these profiles are. If it does not exist, it's actually going to go out and use another method, create enrollment profile, to create one for that user using that naming convention. And at the same time, you'll notice that it's passing in their logged in username. That's the location data piece in the enrollment profile object in the JSS. This is how we make sure that if they're using an enrollment profile, it's tying it back to their AD user record, so it's associating the device to them if they're using this profile that they go out and get. Of course, if they already have one that exists, that's fine. We just skip on past. So building the profile locally, because all we're doing is we're getting data back from the JSS. And we're only going to use two key pieces of the profile that's included with that data that we get back from the API. The rest of it we're going to build locally as a dictionary. And it looks just like this. Mobile config equals dict. That's how you say that this variable is going to be a dictionary object. And then I go through and I'm just setting every single element that I use that you would expect to find inside an enrollment profile. And you'll see that we actually have two that are being pulled from what we got back from the JSS. At the top there, and that's element tree syntax, by the way. So there's the response back I got as an element, and I'm just doing .find text in the path to the value that I want. It's really easy code. We need the UUID for the profile that was generated by the API, and then down here when we get to an inner dictionary, which is the profile payload content, we're also throwing in the invitation that we got from the response. And that invitation is actually the challenge that is used in an enrollment profile. And that invitation, like we saw earlier, ties back to an enrollment profile object in the JSS that has their username and the location data. This all gets, that mobile config variable gets passed into plist_lib and written out to their desktop as a mobile config file. And then it's an unsigned profile, but that's okay. They can continue to use that with a tool like Apple Configurator to just quickly enroll devices without having to go through the over-the-air process and have to authenticate every time. And it's associating it to them in the JSS. So that actually really helps streamline a lot of iOS inventory submissions. All right, the inventory package. Pretty much, this one literally is reinventing the wheel. You're going to see me go through this and you're going to say, Bryson, you're reinventing the wheel. A little bit, because it is, in essence, it's a quick add package. But it's a quick add package that's being assembled on the fly locally using some extra data. So this is a shell script. This is not Python. There's no reason for it to be a Python script. It's very straightforward. It's writing out a small file structure and building a package from it. So it's a quick and simple shell script. The computer invitation I mentioned is read in as a parameter, and then it's also going to be using the username from the person who's logged into self-service to customize it. So this is the third time now I've mentioned that this is a special computer invitation. Well, as it turns out, you can actually create a non-expiring computer invitation in the JSS that doesn't have a management account associated to it. And what do you think happens when you use a computer invitation to enroll a device that doesn't have a management account associated with it? It gets flagged as unmanaged immediately in the JSS, even though it submits inventory. That solves some problems right there, because otherwise, staff who are just using quick add packages to submit inventory on devices and then do remove framework afterwards, well, it's still flagged as a managed device in the JSS. The computer invitation that we're using for this solves that. If it ever expires, I can actually just go to the policy and swap it out with another one. So that's why it's a parameter. So as a part of this script, like I said, it's going to write out a basic file structure just like a quick add package if you were to deconstruct one, because it's going to download the JAMF binary on the fly, so it's always grabbing the latest version. And then it's going to build the package and drop it onto the desktop using package build. All right, so going to, again, take a few snippets out of the code just to show you what it's doing here. Full code's on GitHub. We're going to use application support JAMF temp for the staging area. We're going to drop all this content when we're building this package, just building out the basic file structure there. Root user local bin for the new location of the JAMF binary, and then the scripts directory for our post install script. Now that post install script has to get written on the fly, so it's actually contained inside this script. It's a script within a script. We're using some redirection here into the cat utility to write out to this post install file. And you'll see here that we're actually passing variables into this. So the post install script is being customized on the fly. The JSS URL is just set earlier on in the script. This could be made much broader if it was actually reading the JSS URL off the plist local on the Mac. But right there at the enroll line, you see that we're adding a bunch of stuff in there that's not in a quick add package if you go look at it. The invitation, well, that invitation is what we pass from the JSS. That's the one without a management account. We're passing in the username that we grabbed from self-service. And then we're also telling it no policy and no manage. So this is going to go through the enrollment process, but it won't check for policies, and it will not apply the management framework because all we care about is getting an inventory submission. And then right there at the very end, it removes framework. So pretty much it self-destructs everything that it's doing as part of the inventory process. So this package, if a user uses it on either Macs, it will submit inventory to the JSS. The JSS will mark it as an unmanaged machine because there's no management account. And it will actually remove framework after it's done, so that way the machine doesn't have any pieces of the production JSS left on it. No certificates, no binary, no nothing. It solves the problem of trying to submit inventory without having a bunch of machines marked as managed. And they don't have to authenticate every single time in order to get a quick add package. They just go into self-service, grab this once, and until that special computer invitation does actually expire, but that's like way down the road, or something happens to it, they just go grab a new one, and that's it. I was kind of proud of that one. And this is that last line there. When I say that doing all this stuff is just using package build, well, there's the package build command right there that's close to the end of the script. Telling it where the root file structure is, that's in the JAMF temp space, where the scripts directory is. The identifier, the bundle ID, it can be whatever. For all the stuff that I write internally, it's com.jamfsw.blah. And this one I think is just .inventory package. Version is kind of irrelevant for this. Install location, in my environment, it's always root. So, I mean, that might differ for yours if you were to apply this. And then you'll see that those variables, localhost and package name, those are things that were pre-built earlier on because I just always append the date and time onto the default naming for this package. So that way if they run it multiple times, it's just going to spit out multiple packages. And that's kind of it. That's sort of how we tackled the problem of inventory and trying to submit inventory with these with iOS devices and Macs because there's so many floating around in our environment. All right, so the odd duck, ordering iPhones. Doesn't sound anything like the other three I've described so far, does it? Well, no, it doesn't. It doesn't actually have much to do with them at all. But this one was a hell of a lot of fun. And what's going on here is it was opened up, and that's actually incorrect. It was actually late 2014 going into 2015. But the entire support department was going to get moved off desk phones. They were all going to be given iPhones. So there were a couple of arguments to be made for this move because at the old Graham Avenue office, before we moved into that nice big shiny riverfront building, we suffered several outages, and those were all infrastructure related. Power outages, network, internet connection outages. It was sort of a rough time for support in 2014. Giving them all iPhones in our Verizon account means that all of them, 70 plus people at the time, had access to hotspot if the world collapsed around them. They could still jump on hotspot and continue to access web resources and get on WebEx with all of you guys. The other side of that, of course, was we were moving them off of our ShoreTel system, and we did actually suffer at least one outage with ShoreTel last year. And this keeps them on the cellular. They're off that. And not only can they continue being on the phones during an outage, but they can also take that outside the office and move somewhere else if they need to make phone calls and continue doing support, because we have a different system that handles all the routing. So, as a part of this process, we're talking about letting 70 people know that they get to pick an iPhone and open up a ticket telling us what they want. And, you know, to an IT person, hearing that you're about to get 70 tickets for people saying what iPhone they want seems a little stressful. So, what was our approach to tackling this? Well, for starters, an order form. Presenting some sort of order form to the end user sounded like a much better idea than, say, emailing all support and saying, okay, guys, you're going to have a $300 budget. You can pick an iPhone that fits within that budget. Please also, to expedite your request, include your office location and your current desk phone number because we're going to port it. That sounds really straightforward, but I want to trust them. I really do. But you send out email instructions like that, you will inevitably get back lots of questions from people about like, well, you say it's a $300 budget, but do you really mean I can't get this model? It's better to give them something where all the options that they have are predefined and available, and then they just click what they want and type in something and hit submit. So, yeah, order form. Order form sounded like a much better idea than trying to handle all this by emailing instructions and having them throw in tickets. And again, we like putting things in self-service because, well, it's our product, we better use it. But also, like, self-service allows us to do things like, well, we're only doing this for support, not everybody else. So if we're going to present them in order form, we can maybe use self-service to limit it to just the support group in AD. And that way, they're the only ones that see it. Cool. So again, as I said, there was a budget for this, $300 per staffer for what they could pick. But also, we didn't care like what model or color they picked as long as it was within those $300. So I mean, that's a lot of choices. And again, we wanted to simplify it as much as possible to make sure that people were just selecting something that was valid and then putting in the request. All right, so, oh yeah, then the whole point of getting the number into the ticket as well, like yes, we have access to all that data. We could still go out to the ShoreTel directory or ADE and then look up what their number is and do that, but it's a lot more streamlined if the number is already there in the ticket. We just have one source of information when we're going to go do the port to Verizon. All right, so what was the solution for throwing an order form into self-service? Python. I love Python. The solution was a mini app that loads from a Python script. So, I mean, people who have talked to me before and know my love of Python also know that I've reiterated many times that Python does GUIs. You can do GUIs, and you can make the GUI look however you want. The library for that is called tkinter. And it's just there on every single Mac, 10.7 and up, and actually even older. But it's right there. There are no external dependencies. You just write the script executes, and you get a GUI up in front in the middle, right in the user's face. And like you don't have to preload anything else on the system. It just runs from a script. It's actually not that hard to do, especially after you do a little practice. So we built this GUI in this Python script, and we put all the selections in there. And so like model, storage capacity, color, a field for them to enter in their phone number, which office they were at, so we can double check and make sure that we were shipping it to the right office, because staff members were moving back and forth between Minneapolis and Eau Claire at the time. We also did have some international people that some people on the IT team didn't interact with all that often. So I mean, we put all that into a form, and we put it in self-service, and we scoped to the support group, and we let it run. And in this case, when they hit submit on this form, at the time we were using Zendesk. So in addition to providing a GUI, it also used a service account for Zendesk to generate a ticket on the back end on their behalf with a pre-formatted message containing all their selections. This is what that looks like. They click a button in self-service, it pulls a script from the JSS, nothing else, just a script, and it's pre-rendering a GUI like this. And it's got a picture of the iPhone on the left and all the selections on the right. And you know what? If they happen to change a selection, what does it do? It changes the picture. I didn't have to do that, but I really wanted to. But you also notice here, like the cool thing about this is that there's a bunch of grayed out stuff. Then when you switch your selection, it enables and disables other options. So they can pick whatever phone model they want. It's only going to display options for the capacities and the colors that are actually relevant to that model. 5S's, the 6 was out at the time, as well as the 6 Plus. And then you see at the bottom there, they had the office I'm located at, as well as the number. Because we only had support staff in Eau Claire, Minneapolis, and in the international offices, which primarily at that time were Amsterdam, Hong Kong, and Sydney. And there were very few people there at the time for support. This was a year ago. And yeah, all they had to do was hit submit. We had this set to run once per user, so when the GUI came up and they did their form and hit submit, they didn't see the policy anymore and they were done. If they happened to be one of the staff members who already had an iPhone, because I think we moved strategic technical account managers, senior technical account managers, something STAM, they were moved over already. So they would just click that box at the top, it disables everything else, and they just hit submit, and it just submits a ticket to inform IT, you don't need to do anything with this user, they already got their phone. So, yeah, actually, I've used this Python GUI thing in a few other places, actually. Our asset tag submission script was sort of a proof of concept for this because it does feedback in the window if they enter in an invalid value for the asset tag. So really versatile, just runs from the script, no external dependencies at all. Sort of a nifty way of doing it. So As it turns out, I actually sped through that a little faster than I did in some of my other practice runs. To sort of wrap this up a little bit, once again, like I didn't go real deep into the code on this because it's all out there. These are all things I already picked out from our GitHub page, github.com/JAMFIT. And right now, I'm the curator for that. I am trying to treat it like any other GitHub account or project. And what we're doing here is like, this is actually an example from recently. After 9.8 came out and we moved the binary, somebody actually took it upon themselves for our reset MDM script that we have out there to update it so that it would work with old and new locations of the binary. And he submitted a pull request, and I actually reviewed that and merged it into the master right away because it was good. So if you've got improvements that you could make to the core stuff that we put up there, I'm reviewing that if you make a pull request on it, and it can get merged into it if you made some valid changes that benefit a wide range of people. The other thing is that these are not, stress this, these are not official scripts or tools provided by Jamf software. This is crap that we dream up. It just is. So even though it's not officially support stuff, we don't want to just like leave it hanging in case there is a problem. Like this, the JSS LDAP Sync script. You'll see right here that there is actually an open issue on it because, as it turns out, that Python library I was using for LDAP has a limit of 1,000 records it can pull from an OU. So in this person's case, where they have an OU that has 30,000 records in it, the script sort of crashes on itself because it can't actually do that. It throws a stack trace, or a traceback, sorry. In Python, they're called tracebacks. So he's got an open issue on that with a reference to a possible solution. He probably, can't actually write the code to fix that, but he pointed me to some resources to look into it, or someone else potentially. And, as time allows, we do go back to check on open issues for these things, and we want to improve upon them. And right now, in case you were wondering, yes, everything that's up on that GitHub page is stuff I wrote so far. Nobody else in IT has yet to contribute to it, but that might change at some point. So just shy of 40 minutes here. We're going to just move into Q&A, I guess. I think it's good, I guess.
So,
Questions? Comments, complaints, concerns? Totally unrelated to this, but how's Promoter? You had to bring that up. Who here knows what Promoter is? Okay, so Promoter is a side project of mine, which is a Python library for migrating JSS objects and moving them between two instances while bringing all the dependencies along for the ride. It's still there. There's been a bunch of stuff that's happened recently that's taken my time away from side projects like that. All the code's still there. I just haven't put it up on GitHub, and I do need to finish out a few things for that.
Are there any other things you're planning on adding?
There's a few things that we've done recently that are going to make their way up there. We recently wrote an entirely script-based chatter installer because we had to redeploy chatter at Jamf. So we made a one-click script that downloads and configures chatter for people from SelfService. That'll go up there. Pretty much a lot of times staff will come up to me and they'll say, hey, Bryson, a customer saw this in our SelfService and they would like to see the code for it. Well, instead of just giving them the code, we'll actually work on it a little bit and then we'll probably put it up on our GitHub page. So if there are things that are out on that you see during a demo or while you're with one of our staff and you're looking at something and you're like, well, what's the code for that? If it's not up on GitHub, they can just ask us to put it up on GitHub. And we will. We're not going to hide anything.
No, I think Richie had your Okay.
Mine was real quick. On your LDAP sync, how does it handle a department that gets removed that is a dependency for smart move or?
So in the LDAP Sync script, how does it handle a department that's a member of another group?
So if you're about to remove a department that no longer exists, it's an AD for your LDAP.
Oh no, it doesn't write to AD at all.
But in Casper,
Yes.
and delete it because it no longer exists as an AD. Or in the JSS.
Oh, like checking to see if the department's being used for other objects like network segments. It doesn't do that. Do you want to open an issue on GitHub? But that's a great catch. It doesn't check for that. So in the REST API, objects don't give you any information about where they're being used. So in cases like that, it would actually be pretty simple to write in there. Anything that's known to actually be able to set department, it would have to go to those objects and search through them and then give the all clear, or maybe it would re-update those with a blank value perhaps. But yeah, why don't you pull out the laptop and open up an issue and maybe we'll just write that in. Awesome. No, so they're on their production machine, they open up self-service. Oh yeah, sorry. So he's asking about the inventory package. He's asking, like, and some people got confused about this too. If they go and run that from self-service, is it running on the machine they're running it from self-service? The answer is no. And it's in the description for the policy, but people all too often skip past descriptions. It's just creating a package and dropping it on their desktop for them to copy over to other computers and use. So the self-service portions of it is just creating the enrollment profile or creating the package, which they then have copies of, and they can take it to other systems and enroll devices and submit inventory. You know, I think there are like 6 self-repair utilities in existence out there. This code could be taken to actually do something like that, but I think Tom Larkin also has one on the support GitHub page. I thought that was in production somewhere. It is, but it's still Screw it, we'll do it live. More questions? Service Desk, baby. We were using Zendesk. We are now using Service Desk. We are all in on Atlassian now. Yeah, good times.
Oh. So the pictures you use in your Python script, where are those located that you call them?
Those are embedded in the script. If you can base 64 encode an image and put it into your code and just call it. It's a self-contained application in a script format. Yep.
Got one in the back over there.
Mm-hmm.
What's your favorite Python book?
I haven't read it, but Zed Shah's learned Python the hard way. The guy's an asshole, and I just love his attitude. No, with me, mostly Python has been self-taught. I started out on Code Academy at the recommendation of, well, Nick Amundsen recommended I get into doing Python when he saw some of the stuff I was doing with Bash scripts, which Dusty taught me during the CJA. So I got started on Code Academy and just sort of bounced around different resources and I just did stuff, as you can see here. There are no good TK Inter tutorials out there. There really aren't. So just the FBot website. I don't know why it's called FBot, but that website has a full repository of documentation about TK Inter and TCL, and it just helps answer a lot of questions about, like, well, how do I get it to draw this way? Or how do I get it to lay out this way? And just sort of go from there. There's a lot more questions than I thought there would be. Keep it coming. I think we're good. And, you know, everybody loves leaving early on the last session of the day anyway.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.